our Shiur, our series. So, rabbinic literature, I guess, let's say from post-Talmudic times, after the Talmud, rabbinic literature falls into three major categories. One is chidushim, that is interpretations of the Talmud, mainly the Talmud Bavli. Chidushim. The other genre is codes, that is collections of halachot in such a way that you'll know the bottom line. What is the halacha? Often you'll get a lot of Talmudic interpretation, but the focus of a code is knowing what the law is. So we think about Rambam's Mishneh Torah, think about Rabbi Yosef Karo's Shulchan Aruch, and we think about the Mishnah Berurah, more contemporary, and the Aruch HaShulchan, and really contemporary Pininei Halacha. Okay? So that is the codificatory genre. The third is the world of tshuvot. Responsa, sheilot utshuvot. Now, the point of a sheila and tshuva is that there's a question asked in real time of a halachic authority, and there is an answer. So this is the literature we are going to be focusing on, sheilot utshuvot. I will give you already a historical clue. It started as a separate branch of halachic literature only with the Gaonim. The Gaonim of Bavel, they began the official and independent Shut Responsa literature. Before that, well, we'll have a couple of examples from the Talmud. So what I really want to start out with is an interesting responsa of the Netziv, Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, Rosh Yeshiva of which famous yeshiva in Europe, prototype of the modern yeshiva? Volozhin, exactly, Volozhin. And Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin was in his time a Rosh Yeshiva. He was a commentator on the Torah. He wrote on Midrash Halacha, which many Lithuanian rabbis did focus on. And he was a prolific Meshiv. He wrote a lot of tshuvot. And this is the tshuva. And you'll get the point as we read. But it points up the special nature of this third type of literature, sheilot utshuvot, the responsa literature. Why it is very special, and also what accounts for its high standing in deciding what the halacha is. So let's read the unique normative status of the rabbinic responsum. Responsum is simply Latin for a reply. Kavod harav chole av bet din kilat Kitzingen. Kitzingen in southern Germany, near Würzburg. The rabbi was a certain Rabbi Moshe Aryeh Bamberger. Now, his father was a famous Bamberger, Rabbi Yitzchak Dov Bamberger, or, as in Yiddish German, Seligman Ber Bamberger. He was born in 1807, died in 1878, and was one of the major poskim, halachic authorities in Germany in his time. He was the rabbi of Würzburg, which was a very important Jewish community. He was involved in the bitter controversy, good evening, Michael Gillis, over Reform and Orthodox in Germany. Should Orthodox split away from the general community, the Generalgemeinde, and set up along Hirschian lines the Austritzgemeinde, the separatist community? That was the big thing. It's also the time when Reform was trying to make itself into a legal representative of the Jewish communities in Germany. And Rabbi Bamberger fought this tooth and nail. He fought the idea of separatism. He didn't want there to be an Austritzgemeinde. He wanted a Gemeinde Orthodoxie. And secondly, he fought Reform and anti-Semitism. His house was attacked. It's not new. even in Würzburg in the 19th century, officially emancipation of Jews, there was always a threat to take the emancipation away. He was attacked. His house was set on fire. Nothing is new. Plus ça change. So he fought hard and tooth and nail. He married a very bright woman called Kayla, the daughter of Rabbi Avraham Bing, who was a previous rabbi of Würzburg and a major Ashkenazi halakhic authority, but she knew German. She'd studied German, so she taught her husband. He became very proficient in German, and because of her and his language skills, he managed to get the official position of Rabbi of Würzburg, which the Reform movement had fought. But he came out on top. He was elected by the majority of Jews in Bavaria, and he basically was the posek there and for much of Germany. He set up a Bet Midrash in Würzburg, which also taught women. So similar in a way to the Hirschian line. Modern Orthodoxy in Germany was very frum, but it embraced, I meant in a metaphorical way, women in the context of Torah study and education. That's one of the great heritages of German Orthodoxy that has been passed on. And amongst his pupils at the seminary in Würzburg was the Radatz Hoffman, Rabbi David Zvi Hoffman, who went on to found something similar in Berlin. The Hildesheimer came after the Würzburg seminary and teachers school. He was able, as I said, to successfully resist the struggle to revoke the emancipation of Jews, and he passed away after the second Hakafa on Simchat Torah. And the Bamberger dynasty, by the way, is long and includes many rabbis, and this is for you, Michael Gillis. Rabbi Bamberger, the Kohen in Glasgow, is a descendant of the famous Rabbi Dov Bamberger. Okay, that whole line of Bambergers, they're all over. And they're all very full.
Was the,
very full to this day. Absolutely, the head of the Kohen in Glasgow. So, to read on. His son, or one of his sons, Moshe Aryeh Bamberger, was the rabbi of the nearby community of Kissingen. ועל דבר שהציע מעלת כבודו נרו יאיר, דעת אביו הגאון זצ"ל, שלא להדפיס תשובותיו, אשר השיב הלכה למעשה, Rabbi Yitzchak Dov Bamberger left a will. And in his will, he said, I do not want my children, my sons, to publish my tshuvot, my responsa. And he was a very active responder. Rabbis asked him questions from all over the Jewish world, not only Germany, but all over. And he said, I don't want you to publish them. Why? ביתם שאין לסמוך כל כך על התשובה, כמו מה שכתבתי בדרך לימוד אותו עניין. Rabbi Bamberger said, look, I don't want you to publish my tshuvot, but I do want you to publish my analyses of Talmudic topics. I've written chidushim, noveli, analyses. Those it's fine to publish, but not my responsa in relation to real questions. והקיף הסוגיה על בוריה, יותר ממה שמקיף העניין בעת שבא לשואלו דבר. Because when you're analyzing in your study or in your yeshiva a Talmudic topic, you have all the time in the world. You can clarify every aspect. But when somebody calls you up in the middle of the night and says, I have a medical emergency here, what can we do about somebody who's on life support, not on life support? You don't have all the time in the world. And people will ask you questions 5 minutes before Shabbat, and you have to give them an answer. So Rabbi Bamberger said, it's not well enough researched. I don't want you to publish them. V'samach dvarav, end of line 6, al mashes hiskimu haposkim lismok al piskei harosh yoter me'al tshuvotav. There is a tradition, the Rosh's son, Rabbi Asher ben Yechiel, the famous Rosh, and a son called Yehuda. Anybody know the name of his tshuvot?
Yes.
Zichron Yehuda.
Zichron Yehuda.
Good. Zichron Yehuda. And he says that when it comes to my father's literary output, en nismoch al tshuvotav, the psakim, what he wrote as a commentary on the Talmud, and we know the Piskei Rosh on the Talmud after every Masechet, is more reliable than his responsa. The Siem od Masharu Chazal en lemedin halacha mipi maaseh. And he finishes with a line in Bava Batra that you do not learn halacha from an incident. In other words, the Talmud is full of maaseh shaya uvdahava. You don't learn from the maaseh. Now, actually, now just a second, the sugya does say, as we're going to see shortly, ein lemedin min hamaaseh, ve'ein lemedin me'ahalacha, ela me'halacha lemaaseh. So, but what is that line to do with? You don't learn halacha from a maaseh. May not be a responsum at all, and probably is not. I'll give you an example from Bava Metzia, Daf Lamed Vav, the famous case of the gardeners. Gardeners doing gardening, okay? The gardeners had spades, they had work implements, and every night when they finished with sunset, they used to deposit their spades because they were working on an estate a long way from where they lived with an hahi savta, an old grandma or lady, whoever, okay? Reminds us of the Zohar and the Saba, but hahi savta, you can trust the old savta. She looked after their spades really well every night, okay? Never took her eyes off them. Now, one day, the gardeners, for some reason, were treacherous. And instead of giving the spades to the old grandma, they appointed one of their number to look after the spades. They said, you look after our spades tonight, tomorrow morning we'll come, you'll sleep here, and you'll look after them. And then we'll resume work tomorrow. What happened? The gardener hears music. He hears loud music. People are dancing. People are singing. There's a rave party going on. He leaves the spades and joins the party. And what happens? Can you guess? It's stolen. Somebody steals the spades. So next morning, the gardeners come. They find their fellow gardener snoring away. He was absolutely stoned. Okay, who knows what drugs he took at the party, and he's snoring away, and the spades are gone. So they sue him, and the case came before Rav, the famous bridge between Tanaim and Amoraim, Abarika, and he doesn't say there was a formal sitting of a Bet Din. Maaseh she'aya maaseh, and Rav said, what did Rav say? The shomer, the gardener, is patur. He's exempt. So why is he exempt? But people who, anybody, or it says, Talmud, there was a Talmud who saw what Rav was doing, heard the case, heard the decision, said, the reason is shomer shemosel shomer patur or chayav. Which one? Patur. Patur, you're exempt. The shomer was, sorry, I forgot a very important detail. I was carried away and I'm jet lagged. So let's put it like this. Before the gardener left for the rave party, he actually brought the spades to the old woman after all. He made her evening. So he gave the spades to the old woman, even though he'd been appointed to look after them by his fellow gardeners. And the next morning, when they came, they found, of course, a gardener. He was at the party. He was in a heavy after drinking state. But the spades were stolen from the old Savta. And they sued the gardener. And Rav said the garden is patur, so they can only sue the grandma. So what did the student who saw that think? He thought that the din is that shomer shemosel shomer patur. The first shomer was the gardener. The second shomer, who was appointed by the first shomer, was the old grandma. Now, if the first shomer hands over to a reasonable shomer, a fellow human being, then it's as good as if he had done the guarding himself. So that's the problem with a maaseh. You see, you hear, you think, but you don't really understand. What is the din? Is a baili who hands the bailment over to another baili exempt or liable? Now, if you only witness the incident, you say he was exempt. But the truth is, he is liable. That's the halakha. Because the original bailor, in our case, the gardeners, said, you gardener, X, you be our guardian, not the old grandma. Even though you might say if he, and the reason why he was exempt in this case is because they've always handed over their spades to the old grandma. So what you need to know is all the details of the case, all the facts, before you can, and another case in a bet din. Talmud is full of ma'asim. We saw, Rabbi did this, but do you know why the Rabbi did what he did? The problem of relying upon what the Rabbi did, that you don't know the underlying reason. It's always the problem with not having the full story, okay? So what Rabbi Bamberger was saying, the senior Rabbi Bamberger, is that the Talmud says that you do not rely on a maaseh. But I'm adding a gloss until you understand exactly the underlying principle in what the Rabbi did. So it's very dangerous, okay? Because you don't know why, and it may differ from case to case because of the facts or because of a different halachic principle that's brought to bear. In other words, shortcuts to halakha are never really satisfactory, okay? So that's what it means when the Gemara says, "En lemedin halakha mipi maaseh." But is a rabbinic tshuva written and explained and analyzed, is it the same category as the uvda, as the maaseh, as what you saw, without any further explanation? And the answer is clearly no. Okay? Are you all with me? Hands up, who is with me? Okay, well, whoever I can see. And Debbie says she's with me as well. Okay, she has a cold. It's remarkable that she is still able to follow all of this very quickly indeed. So, middle of line 8. So the Nodabu, so the Netzi Rabbi Berlin says this is the major, the Toref and the Tofes, the two parts of the get. The Toref is the major bit, okay? This is the major bit of what Rabbi Bamberger is asking the Netzi. And this is typical. A rabbi who is not top rank will often address a question to the top rank rabbi to find out what the answer is. Very few lay people sent written questions to halachic authorities. They're almost all from rabbis, okay? Except for the brave Rebbetzin here and there who actually sent a question to Rabbi Feinstein, and he does put her name, and he says to Marat, who, or the Rabbanit, whoever it was. Ulam, the dati adala. Now the answer. The Netziv says, in my opinion, humble opinion, dati adala, ela dvarim nechonim klal. The whole will of Rabbi Yitzchak Dov Bamberger, the Gaon of Würzburg, is totally wrong. Betamam uva'adarabba b'shah shemishivim halakha l'maaseh ba'im la'omek ha'inyan yoter mima sheba inyan b'derech limud. And now the Netziv writes a principle, fixes a principle that's really important. He says you get more halachic truth when you're dealing with a practical question than you get with all the hours and all the shiurim and all the shiurim klaliyim and the whole analysis of the Talmud. One practical question which produces an answer is better than all of that halachic analysis done in your time or in your yeshiva or in your shul. Why? Because when you take responsibility for deciding a halachic issue, you have divine aid, divine assistance, siyata dishmaya, you're engaged in the world, and the best type of halacha comes from the confluence of intellectual knowledge, but also engagement in the world. God is with those who can combine both of those. He is not with the person who is only engaged in the world, but he's not with a person who only studies Torah in an academic ivory tower. Siyata dishmaya, God actively helps and makes right those who combine the two things. Rabbi Bamberger, in his will, only cited 1/3 of the Talmudic dictum. What does it say in Bava Batra? Elamedin halacha, lo mipi limud. You don't get the best halacha from pure learning. Lo mipi maaseh, nor from actually doing something but not explaining. Achi omalo halacha l'maaseh. Until you have a halachic statement which is thoroughly explained and is also designated as fit for general consumption. Go and do it. Va'ayin beperush Rashbam, and look at the Rashbam to see that. Chen b'Sanhedrin linyan zaken mamre. Who is the zaken mamre? What is his crime?
Eh bien, he drinks and he eats.
No, I didn't say Ben Sorero More. I said zaken mamre.
Oh, zaken mamre is one who does not accept the decision of the Sanhedrin and continues to act according to his own opinion. But I think that the zaken mamre, he must say to other people to act according.
There we are. Very good. So the zaken mamre, as Debbie said, is the rebellious elder. Okay. Fina v'lamad kederech shaya lomed patur. His sentence is death, by the way, stoning. But if he only teaches his opinion, which is rejected by the majority of the Sanhedrin, nothing happens to him. You can teach and give shurim on your view until the end of the Golus, okay? No worries. But if you issue a practical ruling, then you're liable to the death penalty. Alma, so we see, the main thing is doing. Halacha l'maaseh is actually translating of theories into practice, not the theoretical learning. V'ha dehiskimul, line 14, haposkim desomchin al piskei arosh zal, yoter mikol tshuvotav, b'makom shemechulakim. Now the Netziv deals with the Shita of the Zichron Yudah, that the Piskei Rosh, the Rosh's reasoned decisions which are recorded in his commentary on the Masechtot of the Talmud, are superior to his Tshuvot. En ze misvara ela migmara mipi beno Rabbeinu Yehuda Zal. First of all, this is not the Gemara. Nor in the Gemara does it say that the Psakim are superior to the Tshuvot, that the analysis. On the contrary, Le'en lemedin mipi ha'limud. But umistama yad'a beno zatzal, da psakim hayu meucharim l'tshuvotav. This is the point. The tshuvot were written before the psakim. And what rule do we have in halacha that says you follow the later view of the same rabbi? Hilchata kebatrai. Thank you, Den. Hilchata kebatrai, the principle established by the Rif in Eruvin, that halakha follows. That's why we can follow our rabbis today, even though they may conflict with what's written in the older books. Hilchata kebatrai. It's a dynamic halakha. So the reason why we follow the Piskei Rosh and not his Tshuvot are because his Tshuvot were earlier. Normally, a rabbi takes time to become the greatest in his generation. He does a lot of theoretical learning, and only when he's old and respected do other rabbis ask him questions and rely upon his opinion. In the Rosh's case, he actually was preeminent authority early on in life. So his tshuvot were written first, and he distills them into the psakim. The Chazar bo Rabbeinu Arosh Zal, and the Rosh therefore changed his mind, and you go to his most recent pronouncement. Teda, second word on line 16. Shehara anach b'tshuvah chelek al siman mem vav. Rabbi Avram ben Noach ben Chaim was a Turkish rabbi. Okay, Katav shim yodim shechazar mipsakav l'tshuvah tshuva ikar. The Ranach says, well, even in relation to the Rosh, if we know that the tshuva came afterwards, we rely upon the tshuva and not on the psak. Alma, we see line 17, Dikara tam dimistama ainan lehefech dechazar mitshuva la psakim. But in most cases, the psak came after the tshuva, so the Rosh is an exception. Hamiha de Torah yotzei b'shat tshuva, beginning of line 18, lamaaseh adif. Halacha lamaaseh, fully explained in a tshuva, is better than any other halachic literature. And it goes to the truth. Much more than what you conclude when you're learning. Now, I just throw you out the famous anecdote in Volozhin, when the Bochrim wanted to know an answer to a shaila, a halachic question. They went to the Rosh Yeshiva. No, they went to the senior lecturer, who was Reb Chaim Soloveitchik, grandfather of Reb Yosha Ber, okay? And they said, Rabbeinu, tell us the answer. What did he say? Don't ask me. Ask Reb Chaim Oizer Grudzinski, who was the ultimate posek lemaaseh for East European Jewry. Chaim Oizer Grudzinski of Vilna. He wanted to ask a question, rabbis from all over the world, including the Trefa and Medinas, England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, America. They all turned to Reb Chaim Oizer. So the Bochrim were a little surprised. And then Reb Chaim Soloveitchik says to them, but follow what he says. Do not show me his written reply. I will be able to refute any claim Reb Chaim Oizer makes, or in his own language, ich ken opstogen. Other times, okay? Whatever Reb Chaim Oizer Grudzinski will write, I can refute. But he is the posek, and I'm the lamdan. And when it comes to psak halacha, rely upon somebody who has a lifetime of, as I said, living at the confluence of real life, of people, and of intellectual learning. That combination is king. So don't ask me. Ask him whatever he says, do, but don't show me what he has written. So I think that's a very sharp way of illustrating the point that Nensiv is making here. And he goes on to say, the Kama Gaonim, I'm on the fourth word at the end of line 18. The Kama Gaonim shelo ratzu ladpis tshuvoteihem sheheshivu. There were Gaonim, and he's thinking really of the founding rabbis of halachic learning in Poland in the 16th and 17th centuries. Rabbi Yaakov Polak, Reb Shalom Shachna, the teachers of the Maharshal and the Ramah. There's a tradition, they refuse to let their students publish their tshuvot. And in fact, all of their learning was passed on orally. Humitam ached, and Tziv explains that the reason for banning writing and publishing their tshuvot was different. The fact is that people would have relied upon their tshuvot much more than on their halachic analyses. Okay? And humility caused them to say, do not publish my tshuvot. the generations that come after me to be felt, to feel that they are bound by my practical tshuvot. Ma she'en ken chidushei halachot. But when you publicize your chidushim, yadu shelo yaskimu alav, they knew that nobody would rely upon them and say, we are bound by the halachic analyses of previous generations. In every yeshiva, we get up and we refute what the early generations say, and we can do that. So you'll find a chidushim of Polak and Shachna in the Marshal and in the Ramah. ודעתי שיהיה מעלת כבודו ואחיו יעמיסו על עצמם עסק הדפסה של שו"ת אביהם. The Netziv's final word is, yes, go ahead and publish. The tshuvot. המקום יתברך יהיה בעוזרם. God will help you. דברי העמוס בעבודה. Meaning, the overworked rabbi, okay, who's under constant pressure to produce. That's how the Netziv describes himself. And he was very busy indeed. He had to run the yeshiva, and he had his writings, and he has an active correspondence with rabbis all over the Jewish world. Okay, so I am going to add to this a line from the famous American jurist Oliver Wendell Holmes. Lahavdil elef havdalot, that I'm comparing the Netziv and Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, but there's a line that Holmes said, which is oft quoted: experience, not logic, is the life of the law. And this is very true. He was a Supreme Court judge, and a very famous one and highly respected, although some of his ideas were looked at askance today. I'm not going to go into lecture on Oliver Wendell Holmes and his role in American law, but that line is very powerful. Experience, not logic, is the life of the law. So this accounts for the superiority of the tshuvot and the Netziv's permission to the sons of Bamberger to publish his tshuvot, and they are indeed published, and we can read them. So it's Shut Yad HaLevi. If you're really interested, Shut Yad HaLevi, they were Leviim. I assume that Bamberger and Glasgow was a Levi as well, but he was. Yes. Thank you, Michael. Okay, there we are. So I think that that's enough for the short introduction and hopefully the sharp introduction to the Responsa literature. Similar sentiments are invoked by the Maharil as well in a different tshuva, but we're not going to go into that now. So the next bit is to look at Responsa in the Talmud and the emergence of the Responsa genre in the Gaonic period. What we're talking about are written and reasoned answers to practical halachic questions, okay? Now, this whole separate genre began fairly slowly, okay? Today, it's a major branch, but in the past, the long past, it's fairly slowly. If we look at the Gemara, well, everything in the Gemara is there. Tshuvot, codification, interpretation, the lot. We haven't yet branched out into those three branches, but we do have written evidence of written replies in the Gemara itself. So, Michael, line 24, please. The term responsa. You can read from the share screen.
The term responsa, teshuvot or she'elot utshuvot, shut, refers to the recorded rulings rendered by halachic authorities to questions submitted to them in writing. The practice of submitting written questions to eminent authorities is recorded in the Mishnah and in the Gemara.
So let's just have a look at at a couple or three illustrations. Gittin, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Shalchu le b'nei Midinat Hayam l'Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel is, of course, a Tana. That's the Mishnah, okay? Rabban Gamliel Hazaken. So they sent him from overseas to Eretz Israel. בני אדם הבאים משם לכאן, שמו יוסף וקוראים יוחנן, יוחנן וקוראים לו יוסף, איך מגרשים נשותיהן? A written question that the Gemara records and the Mishnah, and how are we to deal with divorces by men who have more than one name? If you only have one name, then the get is very simple. Yochanan divorces Masha. Okay, fine. What happens if Yochanan is called Steve or Jeff or Sadia or Jean or anything else? How do we know who the husband is, and is it a kosher get? Amad Rabban Gamliel v'itkin sheyu kotvin ish ploni v'chol shum sheyesh lo. Every other name has to go into the get. Isha plonit v'chol shum sheyesh la. And so with the woman. Mipnei tikkun ha'olam. In order to prevent tragedies where it's not a valid get and the woman thinks she's divorced and marries, children from the second marriage will be mamzerim. Lachen nirel Rabbeinu Tam, Tosafot Rabbeinu Tam says, Hainu kol shmotav beferush. Every single name has to go into the get. And ani ploni, I, Reuven, the mitkere kach v'kach, who's called Jerry, who's called Jules, whatever it is, we put all the names into the get. Sarah, Demit Karya, Miriam, Demit Karya, Charlene, Demit Karya, Jerry, okay? Everything has to go in. So clearly there was a Shalchulei, and he wrote back, Kulu Shani the Rav. This is a little bit cute in Chulin, Daf Tzadi Amud Bet. Now Rav was the preeminent Amorah in Babylon, but he was a Tana as well. So he bridged the gap. He went to live in Babylon, came from Eretz Israel. The Israelis trusted him, and the Chutznikim trusted him, to use common jargon. So Rabbi Yochanan, who was the Amorah, again founding Amorah of Eretz Israel, whenever he'd ask a question of Rav, he would say, Lekadam Rabbeinu Sheba Bavel. He would open up by saying, to our rabbis, or our rabbi in Babylon, Rav. Kinach nafshe. When Rav died, who replaced Rav? Shmuel. Hava katav lishmuel. He used to write to Shmuel, lekadam chavereinu sheba Bavel. Not our rabbi, our colleague. You, Shmuel, are not as great as Rav. I, Rabbi Yochanan, are as great, if not greater than you. He's not Rabbi Shmuel. So therefore he changed the written greeting. But that means they wrote Katavle. Kulu Shani, all those years, Davarav Kayam Babavel ki avekatav Rabbi Yochanan Eretz Israel. Sheila o tshuva haya kotev b'igarto lekadam Rabbeinu shebabavel. So there was an active correspondence, Sheilot u'tshuvot, in the Talmud. Rav Tanchum bar Papa shalach Sheila Rabbi Yossi in Israel, Train Uvdin min Alexandria. Tanchum bar Papa lived in Alexandria, the biggest Jewish community at the time, and they sent Sheilot to Eretz Israel. Train Uvdin Shnei Ma'asot Alexandria binyan yuchasin, all to deal with personal status. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah. I think we've had enough. We will leave this. And the point is that the idea of writing tshuvot, okay, and receiving written replies is already found in the Gemara. But let's have a look at line 5. Shmulik, after Glasgow, we'll have Manchester. Responsa.
Responsa, the Tanaic and Amoraic periods were incorporated into the body of the Talmud and do not appear as a separate literary genre.
So there we are. You have it in the Talmud like everything else, but it's all mixed in, no separation. When do we get the appearance of tshuvot as a separate literary type or genre? The answer is, Shmuel, let's give us another sentence, please.
It is only in the Gaonic period, the middle of the 8th century, that a unique response literature begins to emerge. By that time, the Gaonim, who headed the Babylonian Yeshivot, were the recognized halachic authorities for the entire diaspora, especially North Africa and Spain, where there were no long-standing traditions of Talmudic learning or halachic practice.
Okay. So, by the way, can you name 3 famous yeshivot in Babylon?
Surah,
Surah,
Tum,
Torah,
Hatita, and Nehardia.
Volozhin.
Fantastic. Not Volozhin.
Mata
Mata Machasya is Surah. It's like the district and the more precise locality. Michael, since we're in Manchester, we're over to you. Line 11.
The questions to be sent to Babylon
No,
were
I
assembled.
meant Michael Epstein because
I'm
Ah.
sorry, it's too small. I cannot read it.
okay. Then I apologize for that. You are exempt.
Sure, thank you.
So
Litsari.
we sympathize, but do not worry at all. Jack,
Yes.
let's have from line 11 the questions to be sent.
The questions to be sent to Babylon were assembled by the representatives of yeshivot in different centers and forwarded in parcels, often containing scores of written documents, which were transported by merchants in their caravans.
This is an enterprise, okay? Merchants in caravans from Babylon going all over the Jewish diaspora, okay? With questions and answers from the Babylonian Geonim. One more line, please.
The local representatives of the yeshivot would sift through the questions, polishing their language and forestalling the transmission of questions that had been answered previously.
The Yeshivot of Babylon were the beating heart of Judaism, rabbinic Judaism, during the Gaonic period. This is a time when the Babylonian Talmud was still becoming the guide for life for Jewish communities, and who better than the Babylonian Geonim knew what the Talmud meant. So we start with questions about Talmudic law, and then we go out and embrace all aspects of Judaism. This was a major enterprise, along with questions. Irving, I don't know whether you want to read, but you have to unmute. No, it's not. It is not working. Figure out how to unmute, and then I'll get back to you. Avi, you're next. Along.
Unmuted.
Where am I starting from?
From line 15, along
Okay.
with.
Along with the questions, the inquirers sent monetary donations for the support and maintenance of the yeshivot.
Money. That's where it comes in. This was a business. The yeshivas in Babylon made a fortune because when you sent a question, you sent a large donation to the yeshiva and the Gaon, and large amounts of money were involved here, okay? It sometimes took
It sometimes took a full year for the questions to arrive at their destination. The written responsa of the Gaonim traveled back to the representatives along the same routes. They were copied by the representatives who kept the originals and sent the copies to the community from which the question had come.
So this is beginning to look more and more like law books, case books, okay? We have the questions, we have the answers, and we have a lot of money involved. You can see it worked both ways. The Jews in the diaspora got their answers, and the Gaonim of Babylon received ample support. Marcel, would you continue? Line 21, a central way station.
The central way station through which the caravans passed was Cairo. Bostat.
Bostat, the ancient Cairo where who lived?
Rambam.
Maimonides. Thank you. Debbie got in first as always. In Egypt.
In Egypt, and as a result, copies of numerous original Gaonic responsa were discovered in the 19th century in the famous Cairo Geniza.
Which name of a scholar is associated with the Cairo Geniza? Who discovered it first?
Solomon Schechter.
Solomon Schechter, exactly.
Man?
Solomon Schechter. He went travel from England, and he basically somehow got the head of the rabbi of the Kara community, to let him go through the Geniza, thousands upon thousands of tattered bits of paper, including gems such as Rambam's own handwritten signature. Shuvot of the Gaonim that had never been known except through other books. We discovered the originals. It's an amazing treasure trove. And therefore, we can say an invaluable
treasury of Gaonic response that had been lost over the course of centuries was thus brought to light.
And in fact, it's in the 20th century that we really have access to the original response of the Gaonim. Brian, line 25, please. Unmute.
How do we know that the donations were sizable?
Because we have a record of them, which we discovered in the Cairo Geniza. The amounts of money were very large. Apparently, in the caravans, they were under heavy guard. The money was the main thing. It was guarded. Chuvot, nobody was interested in pilfering Chuvot. But if you knew there was a caravan going from Babylon to Spain, if you wanted to, it was a bit like robbing Wells Fargo, okay? Or the train robbers, okay? A lot of money. It was very heavily guarded.
Okay. A unique feature of the Gaonic Responsa enterprise was its collective nature. The practice was to process the bulk of the questions during the 2 months of Adar and Elul.
In the agrarian society of Babylon, where a lot of Jews worked the land, these were the quiet months. Elul, when you've done your reaping and harvesting. Adar, after you've done the first sowing and you're waiting for your first crop. Okay, Nisan would be the Omer and all that. So then you had what? The
Yarchei Kala.
Yarchei Kala. When the yeshivot
were filled with learned scholars, and all those present could participate in the formulation of the replies to the questions. In exceptional cases, replies were sent out at other times.
You could say, doctor, I need an answer quickly, okay? Patient is dying. So then you could get but you'd pay more to get something, not in this process.
This process was recorded by the 10th century historian of Babylonian Jewry, Natan Habavil.
Natan Habavli. I'll let you read about him in Wikipedia because I want to finish this before we close. And he describes, I translated it from the Hebrew, of course. We read this 10th century. He lived at the time. He was there in the Gaonic period. And this is what he has to say. Let's see if we have any more readers out here. Rebecca, you're next. Would you like to read? Line 31. Unmute. And slowly.
We're now going in responding to questions. Each day in the month of Adar, the Gaon, who was the head of the yeshiva, would present to them all the questions that he had received and give them leave to respond to them.
All the scholars had come, Yarchei Kala, they're all in the great yeshivot, and the head, the Gaon, who's the luminary, opens these meetings and says, okay, let's discuss this. They,
out of respect for him, would reply, we will not give a response in your presence until he would prevail on them, and then each would give his answer in accordance with his knowledge and wisdom.
Again, these are little details that they're true, okay? Because this is somebody who was at the time, just tells you a little about attitude, respect, what they would do in those times. If we're in Melbourne, then we'll go to Menachem Brona. If he's there, would you like to read Menachem?
Yeah, 35, is it? Line 35?
It is line 35, yeah. They would ask questions.
They would ask questions, give answers, and debate each matter, examining it closely. The head of the yeshiva would hear what they said, consider their statements and queries, and analyze the arguments until the truth was clear to him. He would then dictate the answer to the scribe who would record it.
Okay. Thank you, Menachem. I have something called Larry Lauber. Larry, are you there? Okay, no answer.
Yes, I'm here.
You are.
Yeah.
Would you like to read? I can't see you, but welcome. This was their daily practice.
What line was that?
38.
38. This was their daily practice until they had responded to all the questions that had reached them from the Jewish communities during the year. At the end of the month, the questions and answers would be read in the presence of the entire assembly, and the head of the yeshiva would affix his seal on them, following which they would be sent to the recipients.
Adolf Neubauer, as you can imagine, he was not Irish, a German Jewish scholar who used a lot of the Geniza stuff and wrote on the Gaonim. Sefer HaChachamim v'Korot Divrei Hayamim. It's a history of rabbinic life, and it contains this letter by Rabbi Natan Habavli describing how the Babylonian yeshivot really began, this genre of shelot uteshuvot. We have time for one more extract, and we will read this, or these two, until we get to specific shuvot, which I'm going to do. So the method is going to be like this. We go historically through the development of Jewish law from the Geonim onwards. I will give you a brief introduction to the period and the type of shuvot. We'll then read shuvot ranging over all areas of Jewish law and life, and get a taste of many shuvot of the Rishonim, the Gaonim, Rishonim, Achronim, and then shuvot of a contemporary nature. So let's see if we can quickly get in the next two bits. I'm going to go back then to the very beginning, and who has not read yet?
Vivi.
Okay, Jack, we'll go back to you. Line 5, please. The majority
of the questions submitted to the Gaonim sought halachic guidance to the myriad aspects of daily life, ranging from the dietary laws to matters of marriage and divorce, and to all aspects of civil law. The scope of the Gaonic Responsa literature is, however, extremely wide and includes answers to questions regarding the meaning of biblical and Talmudic words or passages, matters of faith which became controversial because of Karaite and Muslim beliefs.
The Jews in the area at the time were subject to Karaitism, Islam, and they had theological questions. The Gaonim answered those as well. Folk customs, please.
Generally, the early responsa were brief and were written in a terse and imperative style.
Well, we will see that. Rambam also. Sometimes a questioner writes 67 lines, and the Rambam replies with 3 words. Avi, would you please take it from line 10? Generally,
the early responsa were
towards
brief
the end of the Gaonic period.
Right. Generally, were brief and were written in towards the end of the Gaonic period. The responsa were gathered in various compilations according to the subject matter, author, or Talmudic tractate.
And then we begin to have Tshuvot Sharet Tzedek, Tshuvot HaGaonim, and a whole slew of works, which were many of them were lost and only discovered with the Cairo Geniza. One more line, please. The extant Gaonic responsa.
The extant Gaonic responsa are only a small part of the total number written, a few thousand out of tens of thousands.
Okay, Brian, line 14. Hello?
Many.
No?
Yeah. Line 14.
Yeah, a large proportion.
A large proportion was lost when communities were destroyed or when other calamities occurred. Scholars are still engaged in deciphering and publishing many of the responsa from the Cairo Geniza. Many Gaonic responsa were preserved in the works of the Rishonim, Sefer HaTorah, or Zarua, and the Mordechai. The first printed volume of the Gaonic Responsa appeared in the 16th century. Most did not appear in print until the 20th century, when several scholars devoted themselves to identifying and publishing Gaonic literature.
Of course, we mentioned Rabbi Dr. Menashe Binyamin Levine, author of the Otsar Hagoni. Okay, I'm going to stop the share, and this is it for this evening. I've outlined what I plan to do. We have a lot of material, and hopefully it'll be interesting. It's certainly varied and will cover many, many aspects of Jewish law and Jewish life. We'll follow the historical pattern, say little about the periods. We'll also learn a lot of fascinating aspects of Jewish history, because the beauty of the Tshuvot is their engagement with real life. This is not a shiur in the yeshiva. It's not abstract halachic analysis. This is the real thing. And Jewish life is just amazing, amazing when you go back into it. So if there are any questions or comments, now is the time. Anybody? Just scream out. No? Okay.
Just trying to think, that there was a book called Sacred Trash. Do I remember that correctly? That talked about the importance of the Geniza.
Absolutely, absolutely. There are several works, but that's a nice title, and I'm glad that you remembered it. The funny thing is that it's not trash at all. But as I said, it has things like Maimonides' handwritten signature, okay? It has amazing stuff, okay? But it all got lumped under the Geniza. And Schechter tells a story how difficult it was to get permission from the rabbi of Cairo. They wouldn't let him in. He had to undergo tests in Gemara and Rashi Tosafot. You know, this professor from Cambridge, what did he know? But he actually, of course, had a rabbinic training beforehand. But anyhow, I am going to do one thing, and with the permission of the organizers, I forgot when I was in New York, and I sent this out, that we had changed the starting time to accommodate Israelis to 8:45 rather than 9. Does anybody remember that?
No.
No?
No.
No. But I think we did. Jack, is it okay to start at 8:45?
As far as I'm concerned, it's okay.
There we are. So we'll start Mickey at Yael at 8:45 from next week. Same time, same place. And that's same place on Wednesday evenings. And I want to wish everybody well, a Chodesh Tov, and Marbin B'Simcha, Yitzhak Shem.